Making headlines this hour, President says projects worth more than $259 million are underway to develop and enhance healthcare services. President says the government is actively engaged in developing ways to introduce environmentally friendly biking in all the cities. The government launches the distribution of teak trees, a species rarely found in the country, following a donation from Sri Lanka. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to PSM News in English with me, Minha Maroof. President Dr. Mohammad Muizzu says that the government is actively engaged in developing ways to introduce environmentally friendly biking in all the cities of the Maldives. In a post shared on his social media platforms, to celebrate World Bicycle Day, President Dr. Muizzu said the day celebrates the power of bicycles to transform our lives and environment. According to the President, bicycles are a simpler, cost-effective and sustainable transportation alternative for greener cities. He said, quote, "As cities become increasingly congested, it's time to rethink our transportation systems," unquote. He added that the government is actively engaged in developing ways to introduce environmentally friendly biking in all the cities of the Maldives, in line with his vision. The theme of this year's World Bicycle Day is Cycling for a Sustainable Future. President Dr. Mohammad Muizzu says projects worth more than $259 million are underway to develop and enhance healthcare services across the country. Speaking to PSM News prior to departure to Saudi Arabia for Hajj pilgrimage, President Dr. Muizzu said the government is aiming to expand the space of health centers throughout the country along with developing and improving the quality of services provided in regional hospitals. Highlighting the efforts being made to develop the health sector, the President said that the development of the health sector is second on his list of priorities, adding that projects worth more than $259 million are already underway in different parts of the country to develop the sector. The President said he is working to develop government hospitals in the capital Male area and improve the quality of healthcare services in the atolls. According to the President, his administration is continuing to work tirelessly to build human resource capacity as well as expand infrastructure and services in the health sector. He added that more than 700 jobs have been created in the health sector in Male area alone so far, while more than 1,200 job opportunities have been created across the country. The government launches the distribution of teak trees, a species rarely found in the country, following a donation from Sri Lankan government as part of its expansive 5 million tree planting program. The initiative, according to the Ministry of Tourism and Environment, is designed to strengthen environmental conservation efforts while reinforcing the country's tourism sector. With the first shipment already dispatched to airports, nationwide planting operations are in progress. At the same time, the Environment Ministry is overseeing tree donations to resorts that have expressed interest, advancing the program's goal of preserving natural ecosystems while enhancing the island's visual appeal. Government officials expressed appreciation for Sri Lanka's contribution, calling the initiative an essential element in broader environmental protection efforts. The program is expected to provide lasting benefits for the tourism industry. Teak trees, recognized for their distinctive presence, will be planted as natural landmarks across both inhabited and uninhabited islands. In subsequent phases, afforestation efforts will extend further across the country. As World Environment Day approaches, tree planting events are planned across the country. Supporting the larger initiative, to raise awareness of this campaign, banners will be sent to one island in each atoll, according to the ministry, while planting programs will be carried out this month in Mimu, Ra, and Shaviani atolls. Since the program's launch, 565,000 trees have been planted, underscoring the government's commitment to environmental sustainability. The Maldives Monetary Authority (MMA) figures show that the Maldives has reported a sharp increase in fish exports during the first 4 months of 2025, with total shipments rising 64.7% year-over-year. The surge, driven largely by fresh and frozen fish sales, underscores broader efforts to expand the fisheries sector's role in the national revenue. According to the MMA's monthly statistics report, the Maldives exported 31,000 metric tons of fish from January to April, a substantial increase from 19,000 metric tons during the same period in 2024. The largest gains were recorded in frozen and fresh skipjack tuna, with exports rising 78% to 28,000 metric tons, up from 15,000 metric tons the previous year. Other frozen and fish products, including skipjack tuna, also saw strong growth. Shipments reached 229 metric tons, marking a 40% increase compared to the 163 metric tons exported a year earlier. Processed tuna followed a similar upward trajectory, with exports expanding 58% to 532 metric tons, reflecting sustained international demand. While overall exports tended upward, canned and pouched fish shipments declined. Volumes fell to 2,127 metric tons from 2,556 metric tons in the same period last year, contrasting with gains in other segments. The government has outlined plans to further develop the fisheries sector, positioning it as a primary driver of national income. Addressing long-standing industry challenges and improving infrastructure remain key priorities, with major initiatives expected to take shape within the administration's first 3 years. At the center of this expansion efforts is a new fish canning facility in Hurmale, led by the Maldives Industrial Fisheries Company (MIFCO). Supported by a $65 million loan from the Islamic Development Bank (ISDB), in collaboration with the Maldivian government, the plant is designed to bolster processing capacity and increase industrial output. Once operational, it is projected to accommodate a daily canning volume of 35 metric tons, strengthening the country's presence in the global seafood market. The Maldives Monetary Authority (MMA) reinforces its stringent 3-stage framework for granting banking licenses, stressing that approvals are issued exclusively to financial institutions that have satisfied all legal requirements. This clarification follows public discourse surrounding banking license procedures, reflecting the central bank's firm stance on regulatory integrity and financial sector oversight. Bank licensing in the Maldives operates under a structured, multi-phase process outlined in the Maldives Banking Act, MMA asserted in a statement. Institutions seeking authorization must navigate 3 distinct stages: obtaining initial information, undergoing a comprehensive evaluation, and securing final approval. Each application, according to the central bank, is subject to rigorous scrutiny, ensuring that prospective banks meet stringent financial and operational benchmarks. Among the criteria assessed are the applicant's financial strength, verification of capital sources, a fit and proper evaluation of shareholders and senior management, and a detailed examination of the proposed business model. Review procedures, according to the central bank, commence with an initial assessment by the MMA's licensing section before applications advance to the Advisory Committee on Financial Institution Licensing for further examination. The final determination whether to grant or deny a license rests with the MMA board. For successful applicants, the board initially issues a conditional license, MMA explained, allowing time for essential preparatory steps. These include formal company registration, development of IT infrastructure, and operational readiness. It added that the MMA conducts a final review, granting full authorization for banking activities once all regulatory requirements are met. The central bank also clarified that applicants who are denied a license are not subject to a mandatory cooling-off period. Institutions may submit a fresh application at any time, the MMA noted, with each submission undergoing a complete reassessment under standard licensing protocols. Reaffirming its commitment to robust financial governance, the MMA underscored that licenses will be granted strictly to institutions that fully comply with statutory obligations, safeguarding the stability and integrity of the banking industry in the Maldives. Maldives Transport and Contracting Company Limited (MTCC) completed 26 projects last year, marking an exceptional operation performance by the state-owned firm. According to MTCC's 2024 annual report, the company completed 26 out of the 189 projects that were underway by the end of the last year. The completed projects list include land reclamation, shore protection, port and airport development spanning the entire country. MTCC also carried out road construction, football stadiums, survey and consultancy services last year. MTCC had completed 6 land reclamation and shore protection projects in 2024, including Mafaru Nunu Atoll, Eteremadivaru Alif Alif Atoll, Inamadu Ndra Atoll, Vilufushi Tha Atoll, along with northwest area from the Velana International Airport and Horafushi Airport. According to the statistics, MTCC completed the development of harbors in 8 different islands last year. These include Kanduoigiri and Vilimale in Kafu Atoll, Maros, Alif Alif Atoll, Muli Mim Atoll, Bara, Ha Alif Atoll, Kumundu Ha Dalu Atoll, Kamadu, Ba Atoll, and Hurumale Harbor 1. In addition, the second phase of the Mafaru International Airport Development Project was also completed by MTCC last year. Last year, MTCC completed 3 road construction projects, which included one in Horafushi, Ha Alif Atoll, and the asphalt paving of part of Velana Airport. Construction projects completed by MTCC during 2024 included the renovation of the Toddu Islamic Center and laying the sub-base of the football fields in Funadu Shaviani Atoll and Formula Dandimagu district. As for survey and consultancy services, MTCC last year rendered its services for the Nilandu Airport Reclamation Project, Guradu Airport, and provided consultancy for the improvement of the service quality of the cargo terminal of Velana International Airport. MTCC maintained its commitment to high standards of delivery while continuing to build the capabilities required for sustained nationwide impact. The company's wide-ranging portfolio and operational footprint position is to remain a reliable national partner in infrastructure development and essential services. Key initiatives in 2024 included a structured rollout of quality assurance protocols at work sites, reorganization of teams to improve efficiency, and the commissioning of a new dredging vessel, Bodu Jarafa, which increased the company's daily dredging capacity by 29%. Global economic growth is slowing more than expected only a few months ago as the fallout from the Trump administration's trade war takes a bigger toll on the U.S. economy, the OECD said on Tuesday, June 3rd, revising down its outlook. The global economy is on course to slow from 3.3% last year to 2.9% in 2025 and 2026, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development said, trimming its estimates from March for growth of 3.1% this year and 3.0% next year. But the growth outlook would likely be even weaker if protectionism increases, further fueling inflation, disrupting supply chains, and rattling financial markets, the Paris-based organization said in its latest economic outlook. US President Donald Trump's tariff announcements since he took office in January have already roiled financial markets and fueled global economic uncertainty, forcing him to walk back some of his initial stances. Last month, the US and China agreed to a temporary truce to scale back tariffs, while Trump also postponed 50% duties on the European Union until July 9th. The OECD forecast the U.S. economy would grow only 1.6% this year and 1.5% next year, assuming for the purpose of making calculations that tariffs in place mid-May would remain so through the rest of 2025 and 2026. For 2025, the new forecast marked a sizable cut as the organization had previously expected the world's biggest economy would grow 2.2% this year and 1.6% next year. While new tariffs may create incentives to manufacture in the United States, higher import prices would squeeze consumers' purchasing power and economic policy uncertainty would hold back corporate investment, the OECD warned. Trump's sweeping tax cut and spending bill was expected to push the U.S. budget deficit to 8% of economic output by 2026, among the biggest fiscal shortfalls for a developed economy, not a war. The OECD said the fallout from the U.S. tariff hikes would be partly offset by government subsidies for a trade-in program on consumer goods like mobile phones and appliances, and increased welfare transfers in China. It estimated the world's second biggest economy, which is not an OECD member, would grow 4.7% this year and 4.3% in 2026. Little change from previous forecasts for 4.8% in 2025 and 4.4% in 2026. The outlook for the euro area was unchanged from March, with growth forecast this year at 1.0% and 1.2% next year, boosted by resilient labor markets and interest rate cuts, while more public spending from Germany would buoy 2026 growth. People were seen transporting Palestinian casualties wounded by Israeli fire near a food distribution site in the southern Gaza. Local health authorities said at least 27 people were killed and dozens wounded by Israeli fire near a food distribution site in southern Gaza, in the third day of chaos and bloodshed at food distribution sites. The Israeli military claimed its forces had opened fire on a group of individuals who had left designated access routes near the distribution center in Rafah. It added it was still investigating what had happened. The deaths came hours after Israel said 3 of its soldiers had been killed in fighting in the northern Gaza Strip as its forces pushed ahead with a months-long offensive against Hamas militants that has laid waste to much of the enclave. A spokesperson for the International Committee of the Red Cross told Reuters that its field hospital in Rafah received 184 casualties, adding that 19 of those were declared dead upon arrival and 8 died of their wounds shortly after. The so-called US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation launched its first distribution site last week in an effort to alleviate widespread hunger amongst Gaza's war-battered population, most of whom had to abandon their home to flee fighting. The foundation's aid plan, which bypasses traditional aid groups, has come under fierce criticism from the United Nations and established charities which say it does not follow humanitarian principles. The group, which is endorsed by Israel, claimed it distributed 21 truckloads of food early on Tuesday and that the aid operation was conducted safely and without incident within the site. However, there have been reports of repeated killings near Rafah as crowds gather to get desperately needed supplies. On June 1st, Palestinian and international officials reported that at least 31 people were killed and dozens more injured. On June 2nd, 3 more Palestinians were reportedly killed by Israeli fire. NATO defense ministers will gather on June 5th in Brussels to discuss member states' military investments, among other topics. NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte has proposed that alliance members meet higher targets for defense spending by 2032. Rutte had proposed NATO members raise defense spending to 3.5% of their GDP and a further 1.5% on broader security-related items to meet U.S. President Donald Trump's demand for a 5% target. NATO aims to agree the new targets at a summit of alliance leaders, including Trump, in The Hague on June 24th to 25.
Well, I think NATO should have 5%, yeah. Well, you can't do it at 2. I mean, at 2%, every country, if you're going to have a country in a regular military, you're at 4%. I think they should be, they're in dangerous territory. I think it should be, they can all afford it, but they should be at 5%, not 2%. I'm the one that got them to pay 2%.
22 of NATO's 32 members meet the current 2% target, but leaders across NATO say that the goal is no longer sufficient as they now regard Russia as a far greater threat in the wake of its 2022 full-scale invasion of Ukraine. No NATO country meets Trump's 5% target. According to NATO, the United States spends about 3.2% of GDP on defense. Poland spends the biggest share of its GDP at over 4%. Soccer star Lionel Messi trained with the Argentina national team on June 2nd as they prepare for their upcoming World Cup qualifier against Chile. Messi turned to Argentina fresh off a standout performance with Inter Miami, where he scored 2 goals and provided 3 assists in a dominant 5-1 win over Columbus Crew on May 31st in Florida. Under the guidance of head coach Lionel Scaloni, Argentina is gearing up for 2 key South American qualifiers, away against Chile in Santiago on June 5th and at home against Colombia at the Monumental Stadium on June 10th. Already qualified for the 2026 World Cup, which will be hosted by Canada, the United States and Mexico. Argentina tops the CONMEBOL standings with 31 points from 10 wins, 1 draw and 3 losses. A newly isolated marine-derived fungus that can degrade polypropylene, discovered by Australian researchers, could represent a breakthrough in the battle against plastic waste. The team at the University of Sydney, supervised by Professor Ali Abbas, said that while laboratory testing is still ongoing, the initial results showing a promising improvement over the earlier findings. In 2023, the team first discovered terrestrial fungi capable of degrading polypropylene by 21% after 30 days and up to 27% after 90 days, the highest rate of degradation they had seen documented globally. The new marine-derived fungus currently being tested shows promise to exceed plastic degrading potential of the terrestrial fungus, the team says. The polypropylene is first pre-treated with heat or UV light before being combined with the fungi in a liquid solution and left to incubate in a shaker, where the degradation happens.
The fungi produce enzymes that naturally break down materials like plastics. We are lightly treating these plastics before we feed them to the fungi, in a way to mimic the natural weathering of the plastics. As we know, plastics are found in many different environments in nature now. Our process connects the treatment steps with the biological steps in a way to optimize the degradation rate. The fungi use these enzymes to latch onto the plastics, but also to degrade them and break down the carbon into lighter compounds like carbon dioxide and water.
Polypropylene, or PP5, is used in everything from food packaging and bottle tops to automatic parts and coat hangers, but is notoriously difficult to recycle due to the contamination and its chemical structure. A report by the Australian Packaging Covenant Organisation found that PP5 made up to 20% of all packaging in 2021 to 2022 financial year, but only around 8% of it was recovered for recycling. Abbas believes that biology-based solutions are important in combating the plastic waste crisis. Lower temperatures means it is less energy intensive, which is not only good for the environment but also more financially efficient, lending itself to a large-scale commercialization. The team is currently working on optimizing the process so it can be scaled up and is engaging with the industry stakeholders and investors for commercialization options. However, Abbas warns that plastic solutions like this are not a silver bullet and that the priority should be on reducing the creation of plastic waste in the first place and working on a circular economy. The team hopes that in the next few years they will have successfully scaled it up to a commercially viable process. And that's all we have now. Thank you for watching. Wish you all a pleasant day ahead.